Welcome to True Crime Cases, where we explore the most intricate and terrifying. In today, we look at a murder that happened on a hectic wedding day that took an unexpected turn. What transpired when the groom revealed his bride's true identity to all of their guests was Hudson, Liam's tragic encounter, and the truth's surprising revelation was a 32-year-old rising political science associate professor at Ohio State University. Was well known for his assurance and charisma at social events and in the classroom. Yet although Hudson's career was flourishing, his personal life had always been more challenging. Impulsive, prone to angry outbursts, and occasionally oblivious to relationship warning flags, John, a 28-year-old girls basketball coach at a high school, was introduced to Hudson in early 2015. School in Columbus, Ohio, and their fortuitous meeting at a nearby charity seemed fated. Occasion where Melissa had been mentoring a group of teenage ladies from disadvantaged communities. Her poise and grace drew Hudson in right away, and they started talking. After then, a fast-paced romance began as they became close via their mutual love for. In just a few months, their courtship, sports, fitness, and education all advanced at breakneck pace. We're organizing a wedding, and although being pursued and based on an emotional bond, their romance was. Despite the warning signs, Melissa kept some parts of her life hidden, especially her. In the past, Hudson's acquaintances saw Melissa's tendency to be secretive, particularly with her personal past. For instance, she flatly denied Hudson access to any of her early pictures, but Hudson dismissed these worries since he was preoccupied with getting married and starting a family. With a stunning lady who appeared flawless on the outside, friends and relatives said. Concerns on Melissa's hesitancy to discuss some subjects, such her early years, but Hudson rejected these worries, believing that love would triumph over any challenges, and the pair started making plans. A lavish wedding scheduled for late June 2015 in a historic church in downtown Columbus, with attendees from Hudson's Ohio State co-workers were among those invited from all around Ohio, and the wedding appeared to be planned to be a lovely conventional affair until the secrets that had been kept a secret were revealed. Beneath the surface, everything started to fall apart in the most terrible and public way conceivable. Then the best day of their life will soon come to an end on June 27, 2015, in the afternoon. Hudson Whitmer's corpse was discovered in the Trinity's men's washroom at around 3:30 p.m. Hudson was recently hosted by the Episcopal Church in downtown Columbus, Ohio, in Melissa's. Just a few hours before to the wedding ceremony, there had been a small, private gathering, and attendees were still. When a groomsman named Langston saw that Hudson had been absent, he was milling around the reception hall. Concerned GR searched for him for an abnormally lengthy period of time, more than 3 hours, and found the locked restroom door after crying out to Hudson and banging many times without getting a response. Greg became agitated and pushed the door open, discovering Hudson's lifeless body inside. Slouched against the lavatory cubicle, his trousers down, and many bullet wounds on his. Blood had spattered the bathroom walls and floor from Greg's body and groin. Panicked as wedding guests hurried to the scene after shock staggered back and yelled for assistance. Greg phoned 911 right away, his voice shaking as he told the paramedics about the horrifying discovery. Came in a matter of minutes, but it was too late. Hudson was declared dead at the site. Greg was reportedly obviously upset, but he maintained his composure when outlining the circumstances. The loo was sealed off as a crime scene by the first responders, and the wedding guests were still there. They were left with shock and astonishment as the happy celebration became into. Following the first response of people there, Columbus police officers came shortly after the incident. Varied from surprise to bewilderment, Melissa, who had been absent for a while, became the immediate center of interest as detectives attempted to piece together the violent and chaotic incidents that had. Columbus police swiftly arrived at Trinity Episcopal Church following the recent events. Ray Matthews, a veteran of the force renowned for his methodical manner, was the 911 call detective. The murder scene was secured, and Matthews and his colleagues conducted a thorough examination of the lavatory where Hudson Liam's body was discovered with blood splattered over the floor and walls. Several bullet wounds on his chest and crotch, as well as his trousers down, suggested a fierce battle had occurred. Hudson also had defensive cuts on his arms, indicating that he had attempted to fend off his assailant, and a little firearm was subsequently found in a garbage bin outside the church, which had been hurriedly disposed of and fingerprint-free. Detectives started questioning the visitors right away in an attempt to put together the everyone was startled by what they discovered about the events leading up to the murder. Witnesses reported a chaotic image from the wedding celebration that happened just before Hudson passed away. According to several reports, Hudson had an unexpected and startling outburst in front of the wedding guests. He had gotten up and started yelling during the reception speech shortly after the wedding. He repeatedly indicated Melissa with the bride's guide before revealing that she was. The entire audience was appalled as Hudson, a guy, still displayed masculine genitalia, resumed his angry public outburst in which he criticized Melissa for concealing her transgender status. Witnesses recounted Melissa's tears as she fled the reception area, feeling embarrassed and disturbed by Hudson's harsh disclosure. The wedding party was thrown into disarray with some visitors tried to comfort Hudson after learning the terrible truth, but they weren't sure how to react. The outburst gave an obvious motive: humiliation, treachery, and while others hurried after Melissa. Infuriated, the police turned their attention right away to Melissa, who had vanished from the church. Detective Matthews and his colleagues started looking for Melissa following the incident. That as the inquiry went on, she was the last person spotted with Hudson before he passed away. The investigators concentrated on learning more about the relationship between the couple and the wedding. Considering the violent altercation that had resulted in Melissa Liam's death, Melissa ran away practically quickly after Hudson's killing, and Stannis departed 28 and became the main suspect. The wedding reception after Hudson's dramatic public outburst, which left the audience inconsolable. Melissa is typically poised and elegant, according to friends and family, but in recent months she has get more anxious as she tries to conceal a significant portion of her identity from Hudson. Melissa Bornell Stannis been aware of her gender identity when she was a teenager. But she kept it a secret from Hudson because she was afraid it would cause him to reject her, destroy the life she had created throughout their brief romance. Melissa had been able to conceal the Melissa was wary of physical closeness, and the couple's relationship was brief and intense. She frequently explains her hesitation by stating that she preferred to postpone having sex until they were married. Hudson, who was ready to make their relationship work, despite his frustration and acceptance of her reasoning. However, in the days preceding their wedding, this delicate equilibrium collapsed. According to 2 days prior to the wedding, Hudson unintentionally entered Melissa's room while Melissa had been in their shared bathroom getting changed when Hudson came in. Unexpectedly, in that fleeting moment of fate, Hudson noticed Melissa nude and discovered that she had mail. Hudson sought an explanation as Melissa attempted to explain her circumstances, leaving her genitalia stunned and furious. However, Hudson stormed out because he couldn't handle the reality, although the pair finally reconciled, at least on the surface right before the wedding, but Hudson's resentment remained hidden behind it. Melissa had always wanted to have gender reassignment surgery, but she was unable to pay for it. The process for her pay as a high school basketball coach for girls, the expense in addition to, she worried a lot since she was afraid of losing her career if her trans identity was found. Worried she would lose her job and all of her hopes would be dashed if the school learnt. Were not unjustified. In 2015, there was a rise in knowledge of transgender rights, but prejudice was still common, especially in places that were conservative like Melissa's. And labored Hudson's unintentional discovery placed Melissa in a precarious position that everything became out of control, but Melissa Liam Stannis stayed composed as police questioned her. She was clearly upset, and as she sat across from the detectives, her eyes darted tensely. Melissa remained calm and maintained a gentle, courteous manner while adamantly denying that she killed her spouse, Hudson, but acknowledged that she had been afraid of what he would do following his unexpected outburst. Melissa told authorities during her interview at the reception that she was afraid of what Hudson He wasn't the kind to simply leave things go after the wedding, so she claimed she was afraid he destroyed everything. My life, I may lose all I've fought for as a local high school girls basketball coach, including my jobs. Melissa was aware that she may lose her job and face financial penalties if her transgender status was made public. Considering that she couldn't afford the gender transformation, the emotional toll would be terrible. Despite her concerns, Melissa denied any involvement in the operation to completely match her physique with her identity. Though her voice faltered, she said, "I didn't kill him in Brand's murder. I would never do that." Police noticed her shaky state as the situation's gravity sank in, yet they stayed. As the inquiry went on, November 54, Melissa's mother was the second skeptic. The sharp-tongued woman, who was originally from San Francisco, was the individual the police resorted to during their inquiry. Gina, a 10-year professor of Tibetan studies, was well known for her unusual way of living and strong beliefs. She was no stranger to breaching social boundaries while studying Buddhism at Ohio State University. When police spoke with her, they soon discovered that Gina, like her daughter, had her own complex nexus with gender norms and identity, which Gina freely acknowledged to investigators fairly, openly admitting that she liked dressing up as a male and going to gay clubs to have interactions with homosexual men, even though she was married at the time, since she regarded it as a way to express herself. Declaring to the cops that "I like breaking gender stereotypes by using binary thinking" is liberating Gina's candor. Despite her candid approach on gender and sexuality, Shaina caught the detectives off guard. Extremely protective of her daughter Melissa, she had assisted Melissa in kept her transgender identity a secret from Hudson because she thought it would ruin her daughters. Shaina later acknowledged that she had warned Melissa not to reveal her gender identification. Regarding the possible romance with Hudson, as well as her work as a girls' basketball coach, "I didn't want to witness Melissa." Gina tell investigators that the world isn't kind to people. Gina lost everything while being questioned, and she furiously rejected any notion that "I would never harm anyone," she said, claiming that she had contributed to Hudson's death. "I had nothing to do with the wedding that took place between my daughter and her husband." Despite her adamant denial, the police were unable to overlook her tense connection with Gina had never approved of Hudson's treatment of Melissa, as had become clear over time. Especially at the wedding, when he made fun of her in front of investigators and relatives. Felt that, despite Gina's claims to the contrary, her rage against Hudson may have served as fuel for the violence. Otherwise, detectives became even more suspicious of you because of Gina's defiance and emotional instability. Don't fully understand the story, but she snapped at a really tight moment when Hudson wasn't himself. "Seemed to have harmed my kid, and I would stop at nothing to keep her safe." This admission just made it worse. Despite Gina's claim on her innocence, the officer was interested in her role in the crime. Continued to play a significant role in the inquiry due to her complex connection with Melissa. Hudson kept raising concerns, and on July 1, 2015, the inquiry took a sharp turn. Detectives in Columbus, Ohio, were given fresh information on a hot, muggy afternoon that would have altered the case's course since a wedding attendee had come forward with a crucial clue. It, according to the guest, provided fresh insight into the circumstances behind Hudson Whitmer's death. Hudson and Chloe Liam, his adoptive sister, have been having an affair for a few. This revelation, which came months before the wedding, rocked the inquiry and added a new level up. The emphasis of the complexity detectives was instantly moved to Chloe, 26, who had always been close to Hudson. However, nobody had believed that their connection had gone too far, and the affair had been going on in the days preceding Hudson and Melissa's engagement and wedding. Hudson had begun to suspect that Chloe was concealing something, that Chloe had long believed Melissa wasn't who she seemed to be, and had taken advantage of her connection with Hudson to delve further into Chloe's tense relationship with Hudson and her envy of Melissa. Produced a poisonous dynamic that researchers discovered could have been essential to Chloe's treachery on the wedding day as a deeper dimension because she had been utilizing the affair. The two had become increasingly possessive of one another over time in an effort to exert control over Hudson. continued, and Chloe was aware that disclosing Melissa's secret may end the partnership, but she had intended to keep Hudson close, but she hadn't foreseen his dramatic outburst during the wedding. When he lost his temper and embarrassed Melissa in front of others, his attempt to control the information backfired. Detectives investigating their visitors think that this encounter offered the final piece of information needed to comprehend that Hudson may have been pushed by twisted family dynamics, treachery, and stress. Pushed him over the brink during the wedding celebration, resulting in his unexpected outburst, but the Chloe was also investigated as a possible co-conspirator or catalyst in Melissa's activities that evening. This fresh evidence, together with the wedding attendees' testimonies, giving the police a better understanding of what transpired before the fatal altercation in the church. The betrayal of Chloe's romance with Hudson, coupled with Melissa's humiliation in the restroom, became the crucial shift that changed the course of the inquiry. As officers dug deeper, attention to Chloe, Liam Hudson, a free-spirited barmaid and 26-year-old adoptive sister, who had a reputation for stirring up conflict in the family and worked at a well-known local location, now with Chloe, became a major suspect once detectives learned of her involvement with Hudson. Took Chloe in for interrogation on July 2, 2015, and she revealed an unexpected admission that she had also had a brief liaison with Melissa some months before to Chloe's first adoption from China. Had always felt a little alienated from the other white members of the Liam family. Because of her free-spirited lifestyle and sense of alienation, Chloe had gone down road of self-destructive behavior. Nova acknowledged in her police statement that she kept her years-long battle with alcoholism a secret from the majority of her family. Disclosed that some of her worst choices, including her entanglements, were influenced by her drinking. Nova claims that she had an affair with Melissa that began on a wild night with both Hudson and Melissa. Melissa characterized the connection with Hudson as short-lived on the night shortly after they started dating. But heated, Nova learnt about Melissa's transgender status throughout their romance. Melissa told Chloe that she was still undergoing surgery and couldn't afford gender transition surgery. Her difficulties. Chloe stated that although she didn't mind Melissa's gender identity, she came to how risky would it be if Hudson ever learned that Chloe had discovered Melissa's secret. A tense moment as she debated telling Hudson or remaining silent while the cops push for more information. Nova asserted that she was not engaged in the murder. That although she was jealous and had given Hudson information, she never meant for the circumstances to becoming violent. Nova apologized for what she had done, but she seemed more worried about the investigators were more concerned with the repercussions of her own errors than the actual murder. She appeared more concerned with clearing her name during the interview due to her casual demeanor. Rather of lamenting her brother's passing, she continued to disclose her romance with Melissa. Provided police with vital information about the complex ties that could have led to the Chloe's indirect role in the incident. Demonstrated that the dynamics inside on the morning of July 1, the Liam family appeared more straightforward than they actually were. The authorities eventually solved the case in 2015, identifying Melissa Liam as the real killer. Detectives spent days looking into the turbulent circumstances preceding the wedding. Concluded that Melissa killed her husband Hudson in a fit of wrath and shame. Despite the fact that the evidence was gradually mounting, Melissa's mental condition following their eventual finale was brought about by Hudson's vicious outburst, which resulted in Hudson's public humiliation of Melissa, in which he continuously yelled, "My bride's a guy," during the wedding reception had been. Witnesses recounted Melissa's tearful escape from the site after Hudson revealed. Investigators discovered that she was transgender in front of their friends and family. Melissa is already terrified that she will lose her position as a high school basketball coach if she identity was exposed, and under the stress of Hudson's treachery, Hudson withdrew to the loo following his startling outburst, and Melissa followed him there in the chapel. Investigators think that Hudson was involved in the tumultuous and emotional altercation that followed. Remained enraged and probably drunk, threatening to destroy Melissa's life even more. Starting a heated, Melissa seized a tiny revolver she had hidden in her possessions during a heated confrontation. As the altercation intensified, Melissa shot Hudson many times, causing him to perish. Hudson's defensive wounds from the restroom indicated that he had retaliated, but Melissa had locked herself inside with him throughout the battle, as shown by the bathroom door. Melissa's fingerprints were not clearly visible on the murder weapon that was hurriedly thrown in a nearby garbage can. Investigators focused on her acquaintances because of her unpredictable behavior in the days after the murder, characterized her as emotionally broken, reclusive, and about to have a breakdown, whereas Melissa had. Police contacted her after she first attempted to disassociate herself from the murder. The evidence when police showed up at her flat on July 1 to take Melissa into custody appeared to accept her fate. She remained composed and didn't fight against being arrested, throwing several members of the neighborhood, but to others, it appeared that the Liam family would eventually. Reactions to their personal secrets being made public were diverse. Some people felt relieved, while others found it difficult to come to terms with the tragedy that had transpired in the months after Hudson. The courtroom turned into a theater for the theatrics surrounding the murder trial of Whitmer. Prosecutor Jew, 42, was renowned for his resolute manner, as was his wife, Melissa Liam Stannis. With commanding presence in the courtroom, he presented the jurors with a clear picture of Melissa's actions. Out of anger and embarrassment following Hudson's public disclosure of her transgender status on their wedding day, Melissa had a reason, according to Adams, who said that she was embarrassed in front of her loved ones throughout the trial. As she saw her life fall apart in front of her, he provided proof from the murder scene, featuring Hudson's protective wounds and the pistol discovered in a nearby garbage can, demonstrating the difficulty the prosecution had persuading the jury that Melissa's emotional condition was a major contributing element to Hudson's demise, and the defense's claim that it was a crime of passion was. Lawyer Morel Jennings Osobranco, 36, is renowned for her methodical approach and composed manner. Melissa, according to Jennings Osobranco, was a victim of circumstances beyond her control rather than a murderer. Her control, this fatal incident, was driven by intense mental distress, according to Jennings and Branco, emphasized Melissa's emotional outburst, which caused her to leave the reception. Sorrow. Jennings Osobranco depicted a woman who was afraid of what was ahead and who had no intention of killing her husband, and Hudson's relatives sat in the front row during the trial. Their feelings were evident. His mother, Linda Liam, was frequently spotted wiping her eyes with tissues, while the emotional strain of the trial was evident in his sister Chloe's somber and aloof demeanor when they found it difficult to accept the passing of their beloved Hudson and the situation surrounding his passing. Following days of testimony, the jury debated for only more than 3 hours before coming to. When the jury reached a verdict, the courtroom went quiet. Melissa was convicted guilty of second. Many were stunned by the degree murder, as they had hoped for a more lenient verdict because to the emotional turmoil unrest around the case. When the court imposed a 15-year to life sentence in Melissa's response in prison was one of shock. She remained still with tears running down her cheeks as her Hudson's family watched in anguish, feeling both relieved and saddened by the knowledge that justice had been attended to, but grieving the loss of Hudson and their former family. Following the trial, Melissa Liam Stannis left, and Melissa Gina and Chloe's lives were permanently changed. A convicted murderer already started her 15-year to life term in the Ohio Reformatory. In the months after her conviction, the media kept up their coverage of her case, with certain outlets, like the Columbus Dispatch, which highlighted her transgender woman's struggles in the Melissa, who had never been able to pay for gender reassignment surgery, had to deal with the everyday. Despite her attempts as a legal teen, the fact that her gender identification conflicts with her environment, Melissa spent her days in relative seclusion to push for improved circumstances, which was previously promising. In the most terrible way possible, the life of love and acceptance she had intended to create had fallen apart. The mother of Stanislaw Melissa went back to work at Ohio State as a Tibetan Buddhism professor. Gina, who was born in San Francisco, was renowned for her commitment to her studies, to dismantling gender and social norms, frequently discussing her personal experiences, dressed as of having affairs with homosexual males, even though she was married. But the trial forced her to under close investigation because authorities believed she may have been involved in Hudson's murder. Of affection and defense for her daughter following his public outburst, despite Gina's vehement denial of any participation in the interview, her tense relationship with Hudson, and her way of living kept her under constant suspicion, and her academic standing plummeted as a result. Some of her coworkers and pupils are doubting her background and her part in Melissa's turbulent. During the trial, Nova Liam Hudson's sister acknowledged that she was an alcoholic and had briefly had an affair with Melissa, which is how Chloe found out about Melissa's transgender status. A bombshell in the courtroom, it added still another level of intricacy to an already complicated case. Nova sought therapy for her drinking at a nearby rehab center after the trial. Her recuperation turned into a protracted and challenging process, and she chose to concentrate on recovering from her addiction and her brother's tragic death as the dust. However, the terrible June 2015 events nevertheless plagued the three women's lives indefinitely. Altered by an explosive, violent moment and the revelation of Hudson's case's secrets, the murder of Whitmer highlights the profound suffering that may result from revelation of secrets and public humiliation. It serves as a reminder that sometimes the most exquisite festivities can conceal the most terrible tragedies.